Anyway, so thank you all for watching, and we're glad you're with us today and spending time together in worship and in the Word of God. And we're going to go ahead and open our Bibles in just a moment, but I thought I would just share for a quick moment something that you probably are all thinking about a little bit to some degree or another. You may not know all these things that are making news right now, but Julie and I were just talking this morning. A story came up this week about, some of you, again, probably know this, but Bill Gates, among others, is wanting to, in the midst of this coronavirus, wanting to put money toward a system based on a chip that we would basically take on in our, presumably in some body part, and it would that could be scanned, that could verify that we've been vaccinated for whether it be this disease or any other disease that might potentially cause problems as a pandemic. And so it becomes sort of a mark to allow us to participate in normal society rather than be a threat to society. And so the question comes up, is that the mark of the beast? How close are we? And this kind of a thing. It's not being forced or anything like that. I don't know whether that will become the mark of the beast, but it should definitely, if nothing else, give us pause to stop and recognize just how close we actually are to what the Bible describes as Jesus coming to wrap up human history. The events that lead up to that, the coming of Antichrist and establishing a system whereby you would need to take a mark to buy and sell, to be part of normal society, and to not take that mark would exclude you from it. It becomes a point at which those who at that time are on the earth who would name the name of Christ will have to choose not to take that mark, as the Bible speaks very harshly of those who do and how they're lost. And so, but not to fear, though. I mean, at the moment, this is just technology. It's not the mark of the beast. In order for it to be the mark of the beast, he has to require us to take it. Now, depending on your eschatology, I happen to be pre-tribulational in my view of how things will pan out. You might be a pan-tribulationist on that note, waiting to see what pans out. I happen to believe that Jesus will come and snatch away his bride prior to a certain point in history, which I believe includes the revealing of Antichrist. If for no other reason, I think we'd be able to identify him if he came and did some certain things, signing a peace treaty with Israel, for example. But I bring this up not to get into a whole prophecy update. We will do those. We'll continue to bring those out as in the coming weeks. But I bring that up now before we get into the Word, just to once again remind us how important it is to be recognizing the times in which we live. If you remember about a year ago, if it was even a year ago, when everything in the Middle East, maybe a little over a year ago, everything in the Middle East began to ramp up so fast that we started to wonder, wow, are we like on the verge of Ezekiel 38 and 39, an event that needs to take place prior to the arrival of Antichrist, but may very well play a huge part in ushering in the Antichrist. Somebody who will be able to find a solution to the Middle Eastern problem, among other things. And so, but I always like to point out when those things ramp up and then they eventually, kind of calm back down. This coronavirus, by comparison, if you recognize how quickly this whole thing, it's really only been inside of a couple of months, really, a few months at the most, where it really became news, and all of a sudden now we find ourselves being strongly suggested to avoid any contact with other people outside of our homes in order to abate this disease from taking over and wiping out more people. And so I bring those things up because the speed with which they come to be and with which they have impact on society should not be lost on us. When the time comes when Antichrist shows up, and it may very well be that this video will exist for somebody who is not raptured with the church but comes to faith after that time. But we should all be aware, and especially those in that time, just how quickly things can change and how quickly you can find yourself where normal is out the window, and all of a sudden we find ourselves in a very different set of circumstances. For those of us who are believers now, this should truly cause us to recognize how short the time is. This is not sandwich board on the corner with a megaphone stuff. This is not some crazy religious thing. And again, it may very well be that you'll watch this sometime afterward and you'll realize just how real the things the Bible had to say about the time we're about to enter into really are. And so my encouragement to us as believers, and certainly in our fellowship, but even beyond that, anybody who would take the Word of God seriously and take their walk with God seriously, recognize the times in which we live and understand that time is truly short. We are closer now to the time when Jesus comes to snatch away his bride than we've ever been. That's not just true mathematically, but as Jesus encouraged, actually he indicted the Pharisees, but certainly we can take it as an encouragement. When we look at the times and signs of the times we're living in, we recognize we are in fact living in the times of the signs that the Bible spoke about. And it can't be long before Jesus comes to snatch us away. It may very well be that this pandemic gives way for somebody to rise up, like many are wanting to right now, whether you look at Macron in France or whether you look at any other leader who feels that there is a need for us to become a global community. The former Prime Minister, Brown of England, recently came out again and mentioned the need for a global government to handle things like this. Whether or not somebody rises up in response to that call right now, we don't know. Time will tell. But we should recognize how quickly the world is being conditioned for the Antichrist to come. And the events that precede his coming must be even that much closer. And that being said, it may very well be that the rapture of the church is even closer than that. So we'll wait and see, but keep your eyes up because your redemption is truly drawing nigh. So that said, be encouraged, be hopeful, be prayerful, and be seeking the Lord on a daily basis with such fervency. Don't let these things pass by and think they're just another thing. How many of these things have to happen for us as a church to wake up and realize that Jesus meant what he said? The Bible means what it says. The Bible is not unclear about the kinds of things that would signal the return of Christ. And so we of all people, people of the book, people of the church, people of Christ, should know and recognize and respond to these things.